Alrighty guys, so this is going to be a brief introduction to the quadratic formula. So we went over this briefly today, this wonderful formula that we will be working on more and more tomorrow. We can use it with any quadratic equation, but we definitely have to use it whenever it's prime and we can't factor it. So remember that our standard form for a quadratic equation is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. Alright, so that's ax squared plus bx plus c. And all we're really going to be working on in this video is identifying what our a, b, and c is and plugging it into our quadratic formula the correct way. So, as you can see, it's pretty easy to determine what a, b, and c are when it's just using letters. But like you have seen, we're going to get something like this, where we actually have numbers plugged in. So your first step when we use the quadratic formula is always going to be to determine your A, your B, and your C. So remember, in front of any letter, there is something that we call a coefficient. A coefficient is the number in front of a variable. And our variables can be x, y, z, and on and on and on. So, in front of every single letter, if there's not already a number, it's always a 1. There's an imaginary 1 because 1 times anything is itself. That is our property of 1. So let's determine what our A, B, and C are. Our A is 1. It's whatever the coefficient in front of the x squared is. So A is 1. B is whatever is in front of the x coefficient. So that is a negative 1. We have to take the sign with us. And lastly, C is our constant. What is a constant? Alright, a constant is a number without a variable. So when we talk about linear equations, the constant is the y-intercept. It doesn't have a variable after it. It's just itself. And in this case, our constant is 12, our C. That's easy to remember because constant starts with C. So A is 1, B is negative 1, and C is 12. Once we identify what our coefficients are, what our A, B, and C are, we can use the quadratic formula. Now, like I mentioned in class, this is something, factoring is something that we can't rush through, and using the quadratic formula is something that we can't rush through, because if we rush, we're going to end up making small mistakes, and why rush when you could just do it right the first time? So, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And before all of you ask, yes, I will give you the formula on any quizzes or tests that you have. So I have to plug in my 3 numbers exactly how the formula states that I need to plug them in. I can't ignore signs. I can't ignore anything like that, because if I do, it will give me the complete wrong answer. Right, so negative b, negative, and I'm going to put my b in parentheses. Whatever b is, I'm going to plug it in. So my b is negative 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 1 squared, minus 4, times a, which is 1, times c, which is 12, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So all that is me carefully plugging in my numbers. If you're not careful, you're going to get the wrong answer, and you're going to complain to Miss Beasley. briefly, and I'm going to say, well, you got a sign wrong. So a double negative, we know, or we should know by now, makes a positive. So that negative is going to become a positive 1. Negative 1 squared. Now any number squared is going to become positive. Let me repeat that. Any number squared is going to become positive. So negative 1 squared is just 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Minus 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 times 12 will be our next step. And 2 times 1 is just 2. See how I'm doing it step by step? I'm not rushing. I'm not jumping ahead. I'm not trying to do things in my head that I don't need to. All right. 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 minus 4 times 12. 4 times 12 is 48. One plus or minus the square root 1 minus 48 is going to give me a negative 47. Ooh. Alright, now we are at somewhat of a stalemate. You know what a stalemate is? It's where you can't go any farther. And that's because we have a negative under the square root. If you will remember back to our basic rules of math, you cannot take the square root of a negative. You can once we get to advanced levels of math, like Algebra 2B, but currently we cannot do this, okay? Because our answer is going to end up looking something like this, and we do not know our imaginary numbers yet. So, for you guys not knowing this yet, an appropriate answer would just be to stop there. You can just stop there at that point because that would be an appropriate answer since we have not learned imaginary numbers. So this, if we were able to do it, would give us two answers. It would give us a plus and it would give us a minus. 1 plus the square root of negative 47 over 2 and 1 minus the square root of negative 47 over 2. Because remember, anything with an x squared is going to have two roots. Alrighty. Oh, we've already written on that side. I'll write down here at the bottom. My last thing that I want to do, because this is what we're going to start with tomorrow. I don't even know if this problem would work, but here it is our A, our B, and our C. This will be your check for tomorrow. When you come into class, I'm going to ask you what you got for A, B, and C. And if you got it, cool. Your participation stays where it is. If you don't have something, it's going to be 10 points off your participation. Very simple. You're finding A, B, and C, just like we did up here. A was 1, B was 1, negative 1, and C was 12. Okay? So screenshot this if you need to. Take a picture of it, write it down, whatever you need to do. Using this equation, I want you to find A, B, and C. That's all I want. Alright? I'll see you guys tomorrow and we'll work more on factoring, finding solutions, and using the quadratic equation.